And welcome aboard Labor Day edition, I guess. The post-Labor Day edition, Martin and Marlow, episode 14. Charlie, I didn't even prep you on this. Is there a blink when first of all, I think it's number 14. I've lost track. There's been so many award-winning shows. 14, do you have a number, a jersey that pops into your head when I say it's not as common as 12, I think at least football-wise?
Yeah, I was thinking quarterback. I'm not good at this anyway. And then if it's a number like 14, which I feel like is not a coveted number, I can't think of any 14s right now off the top of my head.
Dan Fouts, Chargers. Dan Fouts,
All right.
Hall of Fame quarterback. And I think Ernie Banks is probably the most famous. Write it down. We'll edit this out later. Welcome aboard, Chuck. Good to be with you. But I've not seen you in a while on the TV side, long Labor Day weekend and over the weekend. And I thought we'd start with the passing of Lou Brock. I know people have been sharing their stories. What I love we know Cardinal fans love Lou Brock. We know what a gentleman he is, a Hall of Fame player. What I love is the randomness of the people who have chimed in on Twitter. Danny Ainge, former NBA player, Celtics GM, I think he's still their GM, talked about how much he loved Lou and what an influence he was. Adam Sandler tweeted about Lou's passing. I think he put a picture of Lou sliding into second and said, R.I.P. superstar. And then Tom Morello, the lead singer from Rage Against the Machine. If I had told you like the most random list, if I said I've got Danny Ainge, Tom Morello, and Adam Sandler, and they're all talking about Lou Brock, wouldn't that have freaked you out? I mean, that's about as random as it gets, and I just love it because that's the impact Lou had.
Yeah, and when he passes away, unfortunately, at the age of 81, you got to think if he's starting to be known as a baseball player, let's say around 25 or so. I mean, you have 55 years-ish of Lou Brock being in the spotlight as a baseball player and then a Hall of Famer and just an ambassador of the game after that. I'm sure all those people growing up, he was probably, and I only say this because I never saw him in person, but we've seen video, and yesterday I'm looking up all the records and the numbers. He had to be such an exciting player to watch because just that style of baseball of stealing bases and swiping over 900 bases, that's a really exciting part of baseball. And I'm sure a lot of baseball fans, the Cardinals were really good back then. They're winning World Series. It's the national game of the week, and people all across the country are seeing Lou Brock as this really exciting baseball player. So I'm sure that's why people who weren't just Cardinal fans and people who weren't just growing up in St. Louis love Lou Brock. And then, like you said, Lou Brock was always around. He was always around the ballpark. And so I've been here for 12 and a half years, and everybody has a story of Lou Brock just basically being the nicest human being you've ever met. And it's kind of a cliche when someone passes away and people will say, oh, you'll never hear anybody say a bad thing about that person. And that's 100% true with Lou Brock. And he was just so kind. He was so charismatic, the way he smiled. I know we have some kind of funny stories about the way he described different athletes around town. Of course, was it Isaac Bruce he called a speed merchant? Was that right?
Yes. When I was talking about Lou on TV the other night, I said among the things that I love Lou's voice.
Yes.
That dialect. I mean, he was born in Louisiana, but he was raised in Arkansas, and he just had that tinge of a Southern accent. But it's the most unique voice and his delivery. He was great diction, I think, where he, nailed every consonant. But you would always say that speed merchant. And he had said that to us. We were getting, I think he was at an Isaac Bruce event or something. And anytime you and I would see Lou, I think we would just say speed merchant. But for me personally, when I would see him, and I know we joke about, I talk about Marquette all the time. It must be at an annoying level because Lou Brock, who I didn't know him that well. Like I would say, I know Whitey better, I know Shannon better, but of the Cardinal legends, we were friendly, but we weren't extremely close. But every time I would see him, he said, "There he is, Mr. Marquette," and he called me Mr. Marquette. Even in our most recent interview, where he had come back to the ballpark after his latest health crisis, really. It had so many. It was just cruel, all the things that happened to him. He kept making it back to the stadium, and you almost felt bad interviewing a guy sitting in the Cardinals, the Redbird Roost with all the Hall of Famers, but so gracious. And, and a lot of times, like the interview is not, oh, look, Martin talked to Lou or Fox 2 talked to Lou. The fans that are there, and we say this with the current ball players too, it's a chance for them to hear from this guy. So when 40,000 people are chanting Lou and see him waving, and we talk to him for 60 seconds and he talks about what it meant, that's what it's about. And even the out cue of the clip we had the other night, he said, being with the fans, something we both relish. And even just the out cue, relish. It was just such a Lou-ism. I think his most famous quote that you and I would be familiar with was on the radio side. And it was the old morning grind days. And Lou was on hold. And I think it was Old Newsboys Day in town. And he was like the ambassador when they raised money around November every year, selling the newspapers. And they were going to have him join us. So he's on hold, but we don't realize he's on hold. And shockingly, I think McKernan was telling like a porn story or something, something. And Tim was like, oh, of course, that's all I talk about, blah. But at the time, it was something, kind of dicey or inappropriate. And then we realized later that Lou Brock is on hold. And it's a really, oh, shit moment because, like, of all people, if it had been Rudy or Big Al, like, who cares? But it's Lou Brock, the classiest guy in the world. And I don't remember that. There's probably – who's the historian of the morning grind? Who's the guy?
Buck Swope.
He probably has the audio somewhere. But then we go to Lou and say, and joining us now, the one and only Cardinal Hall of Famer. And he began by saying, hello, gentlemen, I'm enjoying the show. And the clip was enjoying the show. And we're like, there's no way in hell he was enjoying the show. Because it was like the most inappropriate topic. But I love that voice. I can still hear it in my head. When I see a picture of him, I hear it in my head. But I love the stories you get, too. Talking to Whitey Herzog. And first of all, Whitey like nails everything. He's 88. He'll turn 89 this fall. But his memory's unbelievable. And he's sitting on his porch yesterday. And he said, you know what, Martin, every time someone dies, they just say all these great things about him. What a great guy he was. Well, damn it, this time it's true.
Yep.
Because Lou is the best. Whitey also said in Cooperstown, he goes, there's two players who are wildly underrated. And he said, and I've thought a lot about this, and it's Yogi Berra and Lou Brock. And Yogi, he said, all anybody thinks about is his one-liners, the malaprops, the funny sayings. And he said, he doesn't realize what a great ball player he was. And he said, with Lou, all people think about is the stolen base. And he said, guy had over 3,000 hits, hit nearly 400 in the World Series with, nearly 100 plate appearances. So it wasn't like a fluky number. But I thought that was a great point from Whitey. And then he also said, man, all these guys are dying. I hope I'm not next. I mean, why? He just, the way he phrases it. And then Mike Shannon on Fox 2 on Sunday night was talking about being teammates. And he said, let me tell you something. He said, when these opposing pitchers knew we were coming to town, he said they would think about Lou for days. And he goes, sure enough, that first inning, they'd put him on base, probably walk him. He'd steal second. They'd bunt him over or whatever. And then they get a fly ball. He says, 1-0. We hadn't even gotten a hit yet. So I love hearing all the Lou stories. And there's no doubt, good guy is the phrase we need to get rid of. Oh, he's a good guy. He's a good guy. Because that's worthless. Lou was a great guy. And nobody would dispute it. And it's just kind of fun to hear all the stories. I don't know what they'll be able to do in terms of tributes because of COVID. But hopefully there's some way that the Cardinal fans, and maybe it's opening day next year, I don't know. But I hope that they have a chance to have a special day.
You love sports? Sure. But what you really love is a winning team and a great story. That's exactly what you get with Appliance Discounters. It started with just 3 employees. 1 location, 3 employees. Denise Bradley, her husband John, her brother Tony. That's it. More than a decade ago. And for years, you've heard me talking about them. Here's why. My dishwasher, it's a Bosch, the quietest dishwasher on the market. Remember Grandma's dishwasher always, That's not what's going on with us. We got it at Appliance Discounters. Our washer, our dryer, our stove, and our refrigerator, and Electrolux. Yes, the Kilcoins put these babies to the test. During the quarantine, the MVP at our house, the dishwasher, it got a workout. We've got big name brands we're talking about at a great price. St. Charles, Baldwin, Maplewood, South County, and in the city. The best bet, just get online, theappliancediscounters.com. Our savings are your savings. The fountains and flags outside invite you in. Once inside, it's obvious what makes Marita Villa so special. It's the people that live there and the people that work there. I know for a fact it's a fun place to visit, been there many times over the years for special events, and you can tell the residents love it as well. Welcoming atmosphere, providing all types of senior living, independent living, skilled nursing, memory care. Marie de Villa Senior Living, that's what we're talking about. A single location. That means ownership is hands-on. The residents here are considered guests, and trust me, they feel that way. The beautiful grounds make it more of a campus-type atmosphere. I love calling it the Marie de Villa campus, located at the corner of Clayton and Weidman Road. I guarantee you've driven by there, probably seen the fountains going. Red for October baseball, blue when the Blues are deep into a playoff run. It's a family-owned facility. It's been in business since 1960, and for so many years, it was home to the Cardinals legend, Red Schoendienst. I encourage you to take a virtual tour or simply to read more about this special place. Go to mariedevilla.com. The best in the bricks. It's more than just a slogan. Why not make your home or garage or chimney look its best by fixing the bricks? That's what B&G Tuck Pointing can do for you. Bricks look their best with proper tuck pointing. Call Rich Galati and his team at 314-363-0525. And by team, of course, we include his daughters Bella and Gabrielle. Or go online, bgtuckpointing.com, a proud St. Louis-based company that supports the hometown St. Louis Blues. Yes, they love their hockey. Chimney repair, foundation repair, caulking, waterproofing. They do it all. Have you driven around St. Louis? We have a lot of brick buildings, and if they need repair, you know who to call. Consider me among the many satisfied customers. Call 363-0525, 363-0525, or go online, bgtuckpointing.com, and find out what it means to be the best in the bricks.
In fact, I forgot, Truck. You know, sometimes my memory, I say I was at an event, but I wasn't.
Mm-hmm.
And like games I thought I covered, but actually it was Joel Goldberg was at that game. This has happened on a few of the Blues playoff memories. But my mom reminded me that I was at Lou Brock Day with her in 1979. He was retiring. And we sat out, and I remembered once she said it, but we sat out in the right field bleachers, which the sweet spot would have been left field. Not complaining, but because Lou loved those left field fans, the bleachers. But anyway, we were in the right field bleachers, and they had there was a wagon gate at the old Busch. And I remember looking over the wall and seeing, because he's on the field and they're going to honor him and surprise him. And I could see what they're bringing out. They gave him a giant boat on Lou Brock Day in 79. He went out on top. That's the great thing is he was stealing bases in his mid-30s. And if you really want to go down a rabbit hole, look at the list of like all-time stolen base leaders in baseball. You know, Ozzie Smith is 22nd all time. And there's names like you would remember, like Ron LaFleur. You're a little young, but he was a great Tiger.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Stolen base guy. And fun to look at. Billy Hamilton was third, and I was freaking out. I didn't think he played long enough. It's a different Billy Hamilton. So don't be confused. So if you want to go down that rabbit hole, Chuck, if you got a little time in your hands, just get into the stolen base and look at all those speed merchants.
Speed merchants. I did notice as I was looking this up yesterday, I thought it was kind of cool that Lou Brock, his career ended in 79, which was the year that Ricky Henderson started. And, of course, he went and beat Lou's record. And you couldn't have two different guys either in terms of Lou, so soft-spoken, and Ricky Henderson, the exact opposite with the bravado and all that. So you can kind of admire both of them for different ways, but Ricky was loud, and Ricky broke that record, and he said, "I'm the greatest," and held up the base, and that's just something that Lou never would have done. I mean, Lou is just such a class act in every sense of the word, on the field, off the field. And I do think this is now in hindsight, but it's kind of cool because I don't know if you remember, but on Lou's birthday, which would have been in the last 4 or 5 months, it was during COVID.
During June.
I don't know how it all, what's that?
It was, back in June.
Yeah. So I don't know how it all came about, but basically every news station, including Fox 2, was at his house. And because he's older and don't want a lot of people at the house, they did these birthday celebrations where his family had signs and everybody was outside of the porch. And we were live on Fox 2. I believe Angela Huddy did the story. And they opened the door, and there's Lou smiling. Everybody, his family and friends, singing him happy birthday. And all the news outlets were there. And it was a cool way to celebrate Lou. Unfortunately, we didn't know that he would only have a few more months left on this earth. But it was kind of a cool goodbye, because that's the last memory I have of Lou, is him smiling there and everybody singing him happy birthday.
How about the trade itself? Because, it's infamous. Brock for Brolio, and poor Ernie Brolio for years. Yeah, I know. I was the guy they traded for Lou Brock. But at the time, and I actually heard Bob Costas reference this on the Cardinals pregame show on Monday. He was on with Mike Claiborne on KMOX, and Costas said, well, at the time, it wasn't really considered a great trade because Lou Brock had played about 2 years for the Cubs. He was okay, but nothing special. And Ernie Brolio had won 21 games. Then a couple years later, he won 18. I looked it up. He was like in the Cy Young, top 3 one year. So people at the time were like, what kind of trade is this? Can you imagine the hot take world of Instagram and Twitter now? Like, what are the Cardinals thinking? They're idiots. It's a trade, actually, that in hindsight is one of the greatest baseball trades ever. It's part of the Cards-Cubs lore. But apparently at the time, people are like, what a crappy trade. It'd be fun if there was a column back then. I don't even know if the columnists were, hatchet men at the time. Probably not. But if anybody just hammered the trade, like, oh, by the way, he played the next 16 seasons in St. Louis and went to the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and that's where sometimes a career wouldn't happen, though, the exact same way in a different spot. For whatever reason, if it was the position you play or the team you're on or the style of play. Lou Brock, if he's with the Cubs, maybe he never becomes the same Lou Brock. And then, of course, with Ernie Brolio, he also gets injured. So it's so easy after the fact to say things like that. I mean, and we're going through that now. Don't get me wrong. I love to critique and criticize the Cardinals when it's fair, but I laugh when everybody is ripping the Cardinals for not signing Fernando Tatis Jr. because apparently he had a bunch of tryouts. Obviously, his dad played here. And I'm thinking, okay, he was 16 years old. How do you project a 16-year-old? Okay, maybe he had some talent. But remember, he goes and signs with the White Sox, who right now are being heralded for this amazing young team they have, and they're able to get Luis Robert and all that. But then you forget, or some people conveniently forget, that the White Sox traded Fernando Tatis Jr. when he was 17 for James Shields, who, by the way, James Shields had a really nice career. It wasn't like it was James Shields when he was 25. They traded Fernando Tatis Jr. for 34-year-old James Shields. So I just think sometimes it's unfair to basically say, oh, the Cardinals, you missed out on every single guy. It's like, okay, the dude was 16 years old.
I feel like there's a tweet every hour, whether it's about Randy Arozarena, Tommy Pham, and now Zach Gallen. Nobody was crying when Zach Gallen was in the Ozuna deal, right? I mean, did anybody what was thought of Zach Gallen then? And he's on another team now. He's already moved on. But I think, does every fan base do that?
I think we do it more than other fan bases. And I get it with Luis Robert because I think people kind of knew he was going to be a stud. But the whole Fernando Tatis Jr. thing, and we do the same thing with, Mike Trout. Mike Trout was picked number 20 or 21, whatever it was. So 20 teams passed on him, right? And he was in high school. Baseball is just different. Like baseball, Casey Mize, who was the number 1 pick of the Tigers a few years back, I don't believe he was drafted out of high school. So think about that. A guy who was not drafted out of high school, all of a sudden 3 years later is the number 1 pick in the draft. That's how crazy the development can be from 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So I just think it's funny when it's so easy to go through the draft and be like, why didn't you know Aaron Judge was going to be Aaron Judge? Well, clearly 30 other teams didn't either.
Well, I think the Luis Robert sticks out just because of the money, which people are always criticizing the Cardinals. And you had the famous quote, by the way, I haven't seen or heard from Mike Gersh, the GM. When's the last time you saw or heard from the Cardinals GM? Isn't it crazy? I know Mo runs all of the Zooms, but Gersh had the famous quote that said the puke point. And I think they even publicly said on Luis Robert that they had like a number in mind, right? That they got – and I don't know what the Sox ended up giving him, but obviously the Cardinals had a ceiling and it came up just a little bit short. I think that's where the fan base frustration is when every once in a while just go past your comfort level and say, you know what, on this one, we're just going to roll the dice. Now, they've gone past their comfort level on the Albert offer, the Hayward offer. David Price, they were way up there in dollars, but I think that's the frustration is you just always the bridesmaid on these big ticket items. Even on his big ticket would have been way less than a proven, star like Albert or Hayward, but it's still coming up short. I think that's where the frustration is.
I understand that. And with Jason Hayward, remember, he also didn't want to play here. Like, let's just be real about it. And that's fine. I'm not criticizing
Well,
him.
they actually offered more, right? Their deal was more.
And let's be real. We all love St. Louis. You're from here. I've lived here. But there are some people that would prefer Chicago over St. Louis. A lot of people. Let's be real.
Yes.
And Jason Hayward goes up to Chicago. He wins a championship. Look at Luis Robert. Maybe he wanted to be in a bigger city, a bigger market like Chicago. And as a Cuban, you have this great Cuban leader in Jose Abreu to kind of take this guy under his wing. I think that was a major part of this. I mean, I'm sure money is always going to be huge, but it really seemed like from everything I read that Luis Robert really looked up to Jose Abreu. He's this Cuban icon. He was there to mentor him, and that was a huge part of it.
Martin and Marlow, episode 14, we're pretty sure. We're going to go back and check later. Make sure you subscribe. You can get it on iTunes, Apple iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, and we have some great sponsors, including a guy I'll be contacting later, Charlie, for some lawnmower input. Who brings us the Marlow moments?
You're talking about Tim Jankerson, St. Louis Lawn Care, doing a great job. They usually cut my lawn on Mondays. Yesterday was a holiday, so they should be coming any minute, actually. And I'm glad they haven't come yet, though, because then they would be noisy for our beautiful Zoom. But Tim Jankerson at St. Louis Lawn Care. He also has St. Louis Equipment, which you're going to call or email him to see if he can fix your lawnmower. But he does a lot of fixing and selling of big commercial lawnmowers. We also have Kirkwood Pizzeria. Just went there the other day. I always get the half veggie, half meat lovers pizza. And my guy there, Carl, actually, he said that one of his best customers at Kirkwood Pizzeria is the Hall of Famer Rick Hummel. He said Rick Hummel comes in all the time, loves Kirkwood Pizzeria. I'm looking at Otis, Kenilwood Pet Resorts. I'm taking Otis there Friday for a haircut. He needs a haircut and a bath, and he needs to play for day camp. And then, of course, Corner Butcher. I was grilling all day yesterday. I think I took care of all the sponsors there. Corner Butcher, Fenton, fantastic. I always get the fillets. I get the take-home dishes. Italian beef is really good. Swedish meatballs. Corner Butcher will hook you up.
Kirkwood is a media hub. I mean, you're the outskirts of Kirkwood. 590 The Fan located there. McKernan lives there. But Joey Vitale, the Blues analyst, saw him the other day, was having lunch with my wife, my mom, my sister. We're sitting outside downtown Kirkwood. There's the bread man, Joey Vitale. John Kelly, I believe, lives in Kirkwood. The commish, Rick Hummel, a virtual media hub. It's inside the bubble there, the Kirkwood media bubble. Martin and Marlow brought to you also by Triad Bank, located in Frontenac on Clayton Road. Get them on the web at triadbanking.com. Based in St. Louis, started here in 2005. So if you're a small business owner looking to get business done, make sure you talk to Jim Regner or anybody on his team at Triad Bank. Marie DeVilla Senior Living, located at the corner of Clayton and Weidman Road. They've been around since 1960, and we were talking Lou Brock stories. Red Shanedeans, Lou's good friend for many years. Red lived and also helped run Marie DeVilla for many years. MarieDeVilla.com is where you can take a virtual tour. Also, appliance discounters. Get online at theappliancediscounters.com. Whether it's a washer, dryer, refrigerator, stove, whatever you're in the market for, make sure you get the top name brands. It'd be the top brand names, I believe. Reverse that. Edit that. Brand names. GE, Frigidaire, you name it. They've got it at appliance discounters. And also, B&G Tuck Pointing, quite simply, the best in the bricks. Charles and Marlow Management expanding over there. You know, if you've got any brick buildings, maybe a chimney, a garage that needs a little upgrade, make sure you get the best in the bricks. That's what they do at B&G Tuck Pointing. Mortar, foundation repair, waterproofing, bgtuckpointing.com. Cardinals in a stretch now where I believe it's still 6 to go in terms of doubleheaders. 6 left this month. An insane amount of games, which will be kind of fun to watch because even though there are no fans in the stands, it's still baseball. And you really are going to need somebody to step up because you've got KK, who's out. You've been patching this thing together as best you can. And Carlos Martinez, I know as we tape this, he's going to pitch later today. But they almost, I mean, I don't know what you can expect from him. But if they're going to survive this stretch, they almost, and you hate to say we're counting on Carlos because that could be dangerous. But I think they need him big time down this stretch.
Yeah, I do think the one thing going into this weird year, and then I thought the same, or even more so after the Cardinals had this 17-day pause, is the one thing you can really never knock the Cardinals about. And I'm thinking, again, I got here in 2008. I feel like this has always been the case. They always have fantastic pitching depth. They always do. And I know you can certainly critique the lineup. And we talked about, not having a stud like Luis Robert, and you're looking at the outfield. We discussed earlier about how every day there's a tweet about Fernando Tatis Jr. And now every tweet is how bad the Cardinals outfield is. The combined home runs of the Cardinals outfield is not even the same as Fernando Tatis Jr. and all that. But again, the Cardinals always have fantastic pitching depth. And that's where, look, even if Carlos Martinez, if he only goes 4 innings for his first outing, and maybe he builds up to 5 in his next one, there are so many guys. Look at Gomber. Gomber throws 2 2/3 the other day in a doubleheader. He throws 55 pitches. I know he walked too many guys, but he basically said, I wasn't giving in there. I knew I wasn't going to go deep in the game, so I'm not going to give up a run. Punches out 5 guys. A guy like Gomber, the next time out, if they need him, can't he not throw 70, 75 pitches, get close to a full workload? And I just think when you start throwing out the names of guys that can give you a start, whether it's Ponce, whether it's Gomber, whether it's now Carlos Martinez, and then they have so many multi-inning relievers, a guy like Helsley who can give you more than 1 inning. I'm really not worried about the Cardinals filling up these innings, even with all the doubleheaders. And to be honest with you, I love the 7-inning doubleheaders. I know baseball purists will say, if there's some way baseball could incorporate like a Saturday 7-inning doubleheader just on that Saturday and maybe give the guys a different off day, I think people are really into these 7-inning doubleheaders.
All right, before we wind it down, I think we may have passed the 20-minute. Chuck says everything's 20 minutes. We're past 20 minutes, I believe. A couple of randoms. LeBron James getting major props in St. Louis. Did you hear it? I'm sure you've seen it online, but he was breaking down the Houston Rockets. And he was just talking about how much depth they have and so many different weapons. And he compared it to the greatest show on turf. And he had intricate knowledge. He said the St. Louis Rams. I mean, he mentions Isaac Bruce, Torrey Holt, Marshall Faulk, Oz Hakeem. I mean, he was drilling down on the entire roster. And I guess if you're his age, he's probably in high school when the Rams were really good. So that would make sense. But it was a pretty cool clip because it wasn't just, it reminds me of the Rams back in the day. I mean, he went into great detail of the arsenal they had with Coach Martz. And so shout out to LeBron. And, of course, I mentioned it, people are like, well, I don't really like him, but, well, he's not my favorite. But he's such a polarizing figure. You can't even, compliment him for complimenting the St. Louis Rams.
I was going to say I was going to have to criticize him because he didn't mention Orlando Pace, an Ohio State guy, and LeBron grew up a big Ohio State fan, and LeBron didn't mention Kurt Warner. No, I'm kidding. But I also heard that you know what you're talking about when you mention Oz Hakeem because everybody knows Holt and Bruce and Falk and 2 of those guys in the Hall of Fame and hopefully Torrey as well. But you start bringing up Oz Hakeem, you really know what you're talking about. I think LeBron is really a student of sports. And he was a really good football player too. Remember, he was a really good wide receiver in high school. And we always joke about what would he have been if he played football. Could he have been a great defensive end or a great tight end? He probably would have been. So I'm sure he grew up. Yeah, I'm 38. So in 99, I was 17. I think LeBron is 35. So yeah, he was probably 14, 15 watching The Greatest Show on Turf.
Another Rams-related note, the big box office is the movie Tenet. I don't know anything about it, but the star is John David Washington. And I think it's before you were here, but it's Denzel's kid. And the Rams had him on the practice squad for an entire year. So every time you'd be there on an open locker Wednesday or whatever, it's Denzel's kid. I mean, and clearly, I think, the Rams left Hollywood, but Hollywood never left the Rams. They always kind of had this, infatuation with stars. Even like when they drafted Chris Long, people say, oh, it's because it's Howie's kid. They just love the big names. But Denzel's kid was on the team practice squad for a year. Now he's a movie star apparently. But we had a preseason game in Miami, and I remember we're leaving the game. You know how hectic it is to get on the bus because if you miss it in your media, they're leaving you behind. And there's just I'm just trying to throw you throw your luggage under the bus 4, and there's just a massive crowd of people. And I was annoyed because I'm like, God, I can't even get to the damn bus and throw my bag on. And it looked like they were players just standing around. It's because Denzel was there. So here, all these, millionaire football players, and some were, young guys just trying to make the team, not all millionaires, but they're all in line just to get a picture with Denzel. And that was the only star power I think they really had. I mean, the team was about to be in major decline, but I'll never forget one night with Denzel in Miami, brush with greatness, Chuck. That's all I got. And another birthday shout out. Actually, I have a live studio audience. The missus, you can give her a shout out, Charlie. Kim's birthday. I won't say the number, but it's a milestone. 39 again. Kim Kilcoyne's birthday, Labor Day Monday, and a live studio audience. She's listening intently to our breakdown of the Luis Robert signing. Kimber, say hi to Chuck.
Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Kim. Happy birthday. Martin better have done something nice for you. He better still if he hasn't.
Oh, yeah. No.
He did.
She's
Is
getting
she
a
really
brand new
listening to
camera.
the whole
That's her passion is photography. So it's a live studio audience. Jess is invited to next week's taping. Charles, have yourself a great week.
Hold on, real quick.
Real quick.
Does she listens to the whole 30 minutes of this nonsense?
I think she came in. She may have missed the Lou Brock segment, but she'll be podcasting later today for the entire segment, I'm sure.
God bless her.